Hi and welcome to my YouTube channel. This time I will focus on the checkpoint R81.10, the latest version. I will do the same lab as before. We have a gateway separated from the management server. The gateway have 4 internal VLANs, one for management, one for VM1, 2, and for website, and one for the internet. Here we have a spoofed VM, but we will focus on it on another session. So I will start with the Hyper-V on VMware. I will install it from the turn Windows feature on and off. Very simple, built-in on the Windows. I will select the Hyper-V. I will continue. When the installation will finish, we will have to reboot, and it's done. Now that we have Hyper-V, we will open the console and configure the virtual switch. For each subnet, we need a virtual switch, so I will start by selecting the type of the switch, external, and create. So this one will be for the wireless. I will bind the wireless adapter and then continue to a new virtual switch for each interface, private virtual switch, VMnet 1, 2, and 3 to WW. The default switch, I will use it as a management VLAN, and I will apply in the end to save time. Now that I have a virtual switch, I will configure my first VM is the management server. I will do new, first I will check the folders, folder for virtual machine and folder for the hard disk. And now I will create a new virtual machine. I will name it, and I will use generation 1 because generation 2 doesn't work. The first virtual switch, I will use the default to manage it. I will change the hard disk to as much as I can because it's dynamically allocated. And here I will use the ISO file for the installation. Now that we have a virtual machine, we can edit the settings. First of all, I will change to 2 CPU because it's the minimum requirements. And I will add an external interface for the management server. I use it just not to be just to bypass the firewall that still we don't have. After we have a firewall, we can delete this external interface and use the gateway as default gateway to the internet. Now I will start the management and it will start booting from the ISO file, and I will install the Gaia. The Gaia is the name of the operating system. It's kind of Linux that Checkpoint makes some changes on it. The shell, the default shell is Clish, C-L-I-S-H, and I can switch to expert mode. It looks similar to the Linux. Here I change the root partition to 77, so we will have enough space for upgrades later on. I will give it a password. It's the password for the operating system, not for the management server. It's the Linux under it. The default interface is for management. I will give it an IP. It's better not to change the name or IP because it's written in lots of places on the database. There is an SK that explains how to do it, and it's better to avoid it if we don't need. If we must do it in certain situation, so we need to follow the SK. That's it. It will take time. It depends on how strong your virtual machine. That's it. The next step is to configure the first time wizard. In the first time wizard, we will configure the firewall as firewall gateway or management. First of all, I will configure my default switch to be on the same IP as the management on the same subnet. Excuse me. Now that we are on the same subnet, I will do a snapshot before I will start the first time wizard because sometimes we have errors and we don't want to install it from the beginning. So now it will save time. I will browse to the management IP. I will use the same admin and password in the installation. The IP we configured in the installation. I will just give it a name. As I mentioned before, it's better not to change it. I will give it a domain name and my DNS. If my DNS is internal, so I will use internal IP, it's better. First, I will use the date and time from the installation, and when we have internet, I will use the NTP. Here, I'm uncheck the security gateway, and I use the primary. We can have a new installation for secondary. When it's secondary, it's just synchronized from the primary. It's not really active, it's standby and wait for us to tell it that it's the primary if we have an error on the primary. Now this one is a management. I will configure a user and password for the management server. It's not the Gaia, it's a dashboard or console that we will use later on. And I will restrict it to my IP only. After it, we can add more IPs, and it's better that only IPs that are allowed will be here in the list. This one will take time, so I will continue. That's it. It's better now to have another snapshot also after first time wizard. Now I will add the gateway virtual machine. I will give it a name and generation 1, the same for disk and memory. The first interface will be default. After the installation, I will add more interfaces. the ISO files, the same as for the management. Now we will edit it. First we will change to 2 CPU, and then we will add a network adapter for each VLAN. I used to remove the automatic checkpoint to save time, but still I can do manually checkpoint, not automatic. Now I will add network for each subnet, VM1, 2, and 3. I will fast forward it. That's it. I will boot it and start the installation from the ISO. I'm just checking again, and we are done. The next step is to install the gateway. So we power on and start the installation. The same as for the management, but with different IP. One minute, it's fast. I will configure the IP. Now 77 as before. For upgrades, password. The first interface, we will use it for management. It's kind of MGMT interface for the firewall. It's not a management server. The same subnet but different IP as the management. We can use another subnet, but we will have to have a router or firewall between the gateway and the management. If we have a firewall, we need to open a rule from the gateway to the management and open all the ports we need. That's it. We finish with the basic install. I'm checking again. We have an IP on the same subnet. And now we will browse to the first time wizard on the gateway. Continue admin and password for the Gaia. First time wizard. This time we will uncheck the management. I will give it a name. Same domain name, same DNS as for the management. The DNS is very important for updates and to resolve object names. We will see it later. First, we'll manually, and then we can configure NTP when we know we have internet access. This time, uncheck the security management. If it's cluster, we will use it as a cluster. Here we give it an activation key. The activation key is kind of password that we can know which management will manage this gateway. On the management server, we will use the key to bind the management to this gateway. Here we can see we can connect it also to a management as a service. It's a new feature R81. We have Harmony that we can manage lots of gateways on the same dashboard on the cloud, on Checkpoint Cloud. Of course, we have to buy the license for it. It's a service. That's it. Just wait till it finishes. Now that we have a gateway, we need to configure it. The first thing we want to do is to configure the interfaces. We have interfaces, but we configure only the MGMT interface. Now we will continue ETH1 for VM1, ETH2 for VM2. We'll jump VMnet2, VMnet3, and the wireless, it will be DHCP. So we will mark it obtain automatically. That's it. We will refresh to see which IP we have. It's 192.168.1. Now I will change the DNS. I don't want the DNS of the router. I will use the Google, and the static route I will change on the installation default gateway. I will change it to the router. Now we have internet access to the management. We can verify this is the IP of the router from my IP interface on my laptop. Now we will continue configure the other things. We have date and time, we'll switch to NTP. We have cloning group. So if we have few members in a cluster, we will configure cloning group and add all the members of the cluster to the same cloning group. And when I configure all the global configuration like NTP, SNMP, syslog, static routes. Imagine you have a gateway with 100 VLANs and 200 static routes. You don't want to configure it on each gateway separately. So you configure it on the cloning group, on the first gateway, and it will replicate to the all other gateways on the cluster. Usually it didn't work for me. Every time I saw the cloning group, I noticed about errors that it doesn't work, so I don't use it, but maybe the R81.10 fix it. So it's worth a try. I will continue main notification. I can configure a mail server and email address and to have notification for each system error like disk space or memory or IF down. I can configure syslog to a SIM. Here I will permit only my IP address to manage this gateway with SSH. I will remove the host any. We can use LLDP. It's a new feature on R81. It's kind of CDP. We can configure DHCP relay, BGP, and lots of other networking features. I can change my admin password, I can add users. I'm adding a user for me. It's better for everyone to have his own user. In the syslog we can see any changes. The bin bash is like the Unix shell. It's different from the Clish, the default shell. Here I can harden the password policy so the gateway will not be fall on a brute force attack. I will deny access after few logins and lock the user even if it's admin, so it's better to have more than one admin. Anyway, it will deny access and allow it back after 10 minutes. We can configure radius server to an LDAP server or another radius like RSA or some other radius. It's not support with Google Authenticator, but the LDAP is working and RSA is working. Snapshot management. We can create a snapshot, and here it's a new feature. We can schedule a snapshot. That's it, the same as snapshot. We have backup. The backup is we can move it to another machine and to restore it, but the snapshot is on the same machine only. So it's better to have both of them. Here we can shut down or reboot the gateway, and here we can check for updates. Because it's R81.10, we don't have hotfix right now, but we will see the deployment agent. It's the agent that will update the firewall when we need it, have also updates. So for each hotfix we have is deployment update version. Here I just checked we have an internet line and we have access to the updates portal. Checkpoint.com. That's it. The deployment agent is update, and we can continue with the smart console or smart dashboard. I will open it and will first log in to the management. The dashboard or console is work only with the management server. This is the IP 10.100. The first thing we will do to create a gateway object. If it was a cluster, we use a cluster. I will give it a name. As I mentioned before, it's better not to change. It's a new feature we can upgrade from the Smart Console, but we will use it in another session. Here we will continue with the installation. We give it a name and color. This is the IP of the gateway, and I will use the activation key. This is the activation key we configure in the first time wizard of this gateway. We will use it here. Now the management can manage this gateway. We can see the trust install. Now we will see that it's fetch the gateway interfaces. We just need to do close. I will add application control blade. You can see it here. And on the threat prevention, I will use the autonomous threat prevention, the new feature. Everything is automatically checkpoint take care for all the security on this gateway. This is a big new feature for this version. Here I will just add the comments to each interface. Imagine an object with hundreds of VLAN, you don't know what is what, so it's better to have a comments. If you don't know, you can try to search on the object list for 10.1.0 objects and find out the meaning of each VLAN. Other things you need to do is to modify and we need to be sure we have anti-spoof, prevent and log. I have another session for anti-spoofing. So here is the key for the anti-spoofing. I will continue. VM3, www website. And here in the external interface, I forgot to mention its external zone. You see on the security zone here, it's none. I should change it. We will change it in on the next video. Next thing, I will configure IDNAT, so traffic between VM1 and VM2 will not have NAT, but to the internet we will have NAT. I will configure the inspection. Without HTTPS inspection, the firewall can't open the HTTPS and cannot see what's going on inside. And if there is a malware, it can't protect us, so we must have HTTPS inspection. The meaning of the inspection is that the clients work and encrypt the traffic with this certificate we will configure in few seconds. And the gateway is going to the remote site like Google or Facebook and encrypt the traffic again, like the gateway is asking the data, not the client. So it's kind of man in the middle. The traffic encrypted from the client to the gateway and from the gateway to the remote site. So we will configure this certificate and then we will export it to a file and install it as a trusted root certificate on all clients in the network. The easiest way is to publish by GPO, but you can do it איך שאתה רוצה. Okay, there are few, here I save it to a file. This is another certificate from another lab. I don't need it anymore. Now I will just look at each tab. We can use all the policy, the threat prevention policy in detect mode. Here we can configure if the threat emulation is locally or in the cloud. I will change the port to the platform portal because if I will use a mobile blade, I don't want it to be on the same HTTPS port. So to administrate this management or gateway, I will use 4434, and for the remote access, I will use the default 443. That's it. Here I will bypass IPS inspection on heavy load, but on enterprise, I will upgrade my machines so they will not have heavy load. We can check the statistics on gateway with CP Seismic. So to have a better understanding how this machine is heavy. Here I need to configure if to keep all the connection after install. Let's say we change something on the policy and there is current session that are still running. We need to decide if we will keep this session or we will rematch connection and see if it's still accepting the current policy after the changes. Even if it's still allow, sometimes the session are disconnected. So I see it in lots of places that they keep all connection. The best practice is rematch. And here we can see ISP redundancy configuration for multiple external interfaces. Now that we have gateway object, we can start with the policy configuration. We will publish to save the changes. This is the mechanism that allows few people to manage this management in parallel. Everyone can change configuration and really publish it. Other user cannot see it, and no one can edit the same object that someone else is using. That's it. We can start with the policy. The first rule on the policy is any drop. We will add a log. This is a short brief on the gateway. We just will use the log for debug to see what is not working. And from now on, I will add the rules above it. This rule will allow only for my laptop to manage the gateway and the management. I'm verifying this is my IP. The destination will be the gateway and the management. And the application will be ping HTTPS 4434 and CPM 19009. And of course, action allow. I will first run it. I will change to accept. First, I will clone this one for 4434. And of course, log. The new rule will disallow this permission for all the rest. I want to be sure only me can manage this gateway and management. So I will switch to any. This is also a new feature in R81.10. The default field is none instead of any, because if someone had a rule and forgot to edit the rule, it's in the middle of the policy, any drop, and it's not a good idea. Right now, I will allow ping and domain UDP to the internet. Here I will change it to external zone. Later on, I will see that I forgot to configure it, so I will configure it later. External zone means any IP other than the interfaces we have on this firewall. So if you're going not to VM1net, VM2net, VM3net, or the management, it's external. It's better to split this role to echo to all the internet and DNS only for one or two server you trust. Because if you have a bot inside the network and it's asking a bad DNS server, the DNS server can send you false IPs for legitimized website, and you don't want it to happen. Now I will have object for each interface, so my VM1, 2, and 3, and add it to the rule. The next step is to configure HTTP and HTTPS, but instead of regular rule, I will use it as inline layer of application control. The inline means it's a policy inside a policy. If I will use a regular rule, I cannot check which sites we are surfing. So let's see how it's work. I will change to application. Now I will configure which categorization we want to allow and which not. In a matter of fact, I will configure what to drop and allow all the rest. Here I just change the names for better understanding the policy. We will have here extended log with accounting. The extended log will write the user that access and the website, the particular website, and the amount of traffic this rule generates. Now I will block on the rest. I use the any because the rule number 4 is limiting the rule only to the source and destination. So if, let's say, another IP that is not VM1, 2 or website is trying to hit this rule, it will not work. Here I filter only for categorization. Those categorize is update all the time by checkpoint. I don't really know which website belongs to each categories, but I trust checkpoint to do the job, and if they say it's a critical risk, I believe them. And if something is not working and we need it to work, I will add a rule above 4.1 that will particularly allow this website that I need. Application control is different from URL filtering because it's look inside the packet to look for an application. It doesn't mean which URL is it. We can use a URL that beneath it's running something like TeamViewer or AnyDesk, but the URL is not the same name as the application that's running inside. So this mechanism is better for URL filtering. After we will finish with all the categorization, we will group it so we can use it in another policy on another firewall. We can manage on one management server lots of firewalls, but we need a license for it. The default license is 5 gateways, so we need to be sure we have a license for each gateway. On the same management server, we can copy this rule to another policy also. So if we have like sites that we have a gateway on each site and we have a different policy for each gateway, we can copy this rule, change the source and destination, and paste it and change the source and destination. We can use it again. Now I will make a specific rule for TeamViewer or AnyDesk by using the remote administration. I really like these protocols, but I don't use them on the enterprise, only to help my friends at home. I find that the Microsoft Teams or Zoom are better solution for it. We can see in the camera who will support us, and we need to allow the connection before someone is remote administrate our PC. We can record it, record the whole session, and we cannot copy and paste from our PC to the remote admin. So it's much safer. Here again, I will use the extended. The extended lock works only on application control policy. It doesn't work on security rule, access rule. I think that's it. We will publish the changes. The next step is to update the management. Still publish, still publish. We are going to update. Here we will update the application control categories. And later on, the autonomous policy for the threat prevention. We will do the same. Update. Here we will check the HTTPS inspection. It's a new feature that it's updated automatically. In earlier version, I need to manually get inside in this dashboard and from time to time to check for updates. The HTTPS inspection needs to update all the trusted root certificates and the CRLs for all the certificates. If there is a certificate that broken and the root certificate delete it or revoke it, we need to know it. If we will not update this list, many sites will not work. So here below we can see download and install update automatic. It's a new feature and it's work. I check it. Here we can bypass for well-known traffic like automatic update for checkpoint for Microsoft and antivirus. This is the policy. We can start instead of source any. We can start with specific PC and when everything is working to change to a bigger group of computers and then to any. After the updates will finish, we can install the policy. The first install will be access. We will see it in a minute. And when the access policy will successfully install, we can continue with the threat prevention policy. That's it. Here we will see we will have an error. The first line we see I forgot the security zone external zone. So I will fix it here. ETH4 modify security zone external. That's it. Okay, okay, and okay. And another install. We are still on the access control. When it will finish, we will continue with the threat prevention. Meantime, the IPS management updates need to be done. That's it. We can try to access the internet from VM1, VM2, and the website. The next step is to configure from the internet to our website, and later on I will add new blades, like we will check the autonomous system and we will check the anti-spoof with the spoof VM. That's it for now. Good luck. Bye for now.